there's so much juiciness in your story.
Yeah. So I was working 9 to 5, and although I was working in a career which, environmental science, I was doing something to save the environment, I still felt like I was just existing and, getting in that day-to-day grind of going to work and then partying at the weekend even. And, I just got to a point in my life where I realized I have to make some changes. And I sought out a hypnotherapist, and luckily it was a very spiritual type of hypnotherapy. And I'd always been dabbling, in all kinds of things. Like my mothers are all gifted. And my mother used to do hands-on healing. So, I was always in that kind of environment. But then I chose a very left brain path as a career. So I'd kind of shut everything out. So when I just had this like awakening, I guess you'd say. And, I resolved so much of, everything that I'd suppressed. So it was great. And I mean, as we all know, the beauty of the breath, it comes in and it shakes us up where we need to be shaken. And the experiences that we have, going to the depth of our pain to, mystical experiences. And so I was very lucky that I was a good friend of Leonard Orr, and we did a lot of traveling together, particularly in India. And he was just amazing to be around, because he would go every year to Babaji's ashram. Now I'm going to show you a little bit about that. I've got my presentation, so I'm going to share the screen now.
Perfect, thank you.
You can.
While you're doing that, I just want to highlight that you came from a long line of powerful, gifted women. So it was only a matter of time before your gifts were going to come through. So I really honor you for.
I had this, it was actually a few years ago, I had this reading with an excellent Irish astrologer called Andrew Smith. And he said, "Oh, so Ciara, I have these visions of people before while I'm doing your chart. Now tell me, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm an environmental scientist." And he went, No. Definitely, I cannot see that anywhere. How long have you been doing it for? And I'm like, 20, 25 years. And he's like, "I can't see it anywhere. I saw you traveling around the world, taking people to sacred sites, giving them initiations. That's what you should be doing." And so that's when I went, right, that's it. I really am going to do it. I'm going to write my travel guides. And I started taking people to sacred sites, and we breathe at the sites. And we do other initiations, and it was fantastic. And then COVID happened.
Well, it's just part of life, and it was not. That was just one chapter. It was just one chapter.
So here's a picture of Leonard and I when I got him to come and give a training in Glastonbury. So we're at the top of Glastonbury Tor, and if anybody's ever been there, the energy is magnificent, and there's a very sweet spot. Actually, I made him stand on it, and that's where we're taking the photo from, where there's an energy vortex that comes up through it, and you're like, whoa. It's really great. Yeah. So Leonard is he he was the person to bring rebirthing back to the planet, and conscious connected breathing. And so and it was actually Maha Avatar Herakan Babaji who telepathically taught the technique to Leonard. So he was in a bath one night, and he just spontaneously started doing the connected breathing. And he's like, oh, this is interesting. And he kept with it. And because he was in warm water, he started to feel like, I'm getting in the womb, like memories of being in the womb. And he's like, wow, birth memories started coming up. So they were all living in this, a bit of a commune in a big house in San Francisco in the late 60s. And I'll just show you the next slide. There's an absolute classic of them all in a hot tub there. And there's Sandra.
That's
Rose.
Great. That's so great.
I know. You see, Sandra's hair is fabulous as ever. Yeah. And so they were testing it out on each other, and realizing, like, wow, people are having these like really prolific birth experiences. And it was actually getting too much, because actually birth, our birth sets up our life. And if you've had quite a bit of trauma during your birth, if you're coming back to it and you haven't really done much other work on yourself before, it's too much. It really is too much. So they realized that, oh, actually, we should take the people out of the water and just start doing dry rebirthing. And so that the word came about, rebirthing, because they were going back to their birth experiences. And whenever you go traveling with Leonard, so the other photo is when we were in Mexico, and Leonard does, he did spiritual purification with the elements every day. So that's with fire, with water, was bathing twice a day. So we'd have to go and find bathtubs everywhere. So when we were in India, we'd get like children's paddling pools to fill up with water so that we could do the bathing, because it really does make a difference, doing the water purification. And we do this on trainings as well, because all your stuff is coming up. So we start off on the second day with spiritual purification, and we just wait to see everyone pop. and then they've then got the fire, because fire helps you burn away all your thinking. So you know what it's like when you're sitting with a flame or a candle and you're looking into it, and it's just so calming.
Yes.
And absolutely amazing.
Yes.
So this was the beginning of rebirthing. And so, as I said before, birth sets up our life, and the way we come into the world is so incredibly important. And if we can start gradually bringing in more ways of conscious birth, it's going to make such a difference on humanity. Now, I do have another outlook on that too, because I do also believe that we choose our circumstances in life before we incarnate. And, I might have chosen that type of birth so that I have that challenge that I need to work through.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because I appreciate this philosophy, and I explore it as well. And I have the question of now that cesareans, like scheduled cesareans, are very much a thing, you know, how does that play into that philosophy? You may or may not have a question, but
yeah, absolutely. Well, cesareans, so your ability to choose when you are going to be born psychologically is taken away from you. Okay. It's actually taken away from you. And what you then do is set up in life for people to take power away from you. That you can't do anything without being pushed into doing it. And so since the 1980s, it's pretty standard that planned cesareans happen. I'll just go on to the next. No, all right. Hold on. I'll go one on here. So cesarean, so since the 1980s, a high majority of births are planned cesarean. So it's at the convenience of either the obstetrician or the parents. So, a friend of mine, he was born because the obstetrician said, oh, look, that might be good because it's a public holiday and the father can then be present. So you're not actually going, so a cesarean birth isn't going through the birth canal, picking up all the vital information of digging their way through and then coming out on their own. They kind of lift it up. And another problem is that the baby does often get nicked by the knife. So as we can see, there's been a lot in the last couple of decades of younger people cutting themselves. And a lot of people have rated that back to birth. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, so the core beliefs of someone that's been taken away is like, I don't matter, I don't make a difference, I don't count. Okay. Now, and so here we've got a picture of what it looks like. And in this, they've also got forceps. And that's another birth trauma of being dragged out, by these metal forceps. And it's often in a session, if someone has had, and once they get to a level of trust with their rebirther, that they can go to some deep, do the deep work, and they were a forceps baby, you actually start seeing an indent coming through on them because they're literally on a cellular level getting rid of that. The energy is being released and the trauma is being released.
That does not surprise me at all.
Yeah. So, hold on. I was looking at the wrong slide before. All right. So this is for a planned cesarean. Yeah, they get angry very easily because, they're being forced. They're having to be forced into doing things. So on the one hand, they need that push to go and do things, but then they feel like people are controlling them. Yeah. Oh, and so a fear of sometimes or a fascination with knives can happen. Okay. They may crave touch or they may dislike touch. So when I'm working with someone, I do break the energy cycle when they're breathing and ask them about, how they're feeling and find out, because if I can get this information from them in the intake form, I'll then, I'll sort of touch them and see how they react. Yeah, with permission, of course. Yeah, so they may set up situations where they need to be bailed out, and that often happens. And so
this is speaking like somebody that I know close to me. I won't say it, but I'm like, oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So on a very similar line, an induced birth is also, they're being induced to be born. So it's not when they're planning to come. And so they're being forced into it. And so the synthetic hormone Pitocin is used, which acts very like oxytocin, but you don't get the love aspect. So it's like, why bother? You know, the whole point about, you know, getting the love hormone to start the birth process is that you get that lovely feeling. And that's how birth should be. Yeah. So if we were all in a room now, I'd get you to stand behind each other in a circle and get you to like put your fingers on the shoulders of the person behind, in front of you. So you're like doing this on them, and you're starting to feel that oxytocin building up in you. And it's like, wow, really lovely. And this is how we want mums to be when they're going into labor, to feel that love and to be spoken to so gently and softly and lovingly. Okay, so Pitocin also, I had a client who he was going back through the energetic experience of Pitocin in a session. As you know, anesthetic comes up if someone's been anesthetized. Well, I had someone with Pitocin and he was like, oh, he's like, there's this chemical in me and it's pushing me forward, and he could feel like really violent contractions. So, you know, people really do go back to their birth experiences in breathwork sessions, and it's so important for them to release whatever they're going through. Okay, so yeah, I can't do it myself. What I want isn't important are often things that they're feeling, and they feel very controlled by other people. And then they resist control and feel like everyone's manipulating them. And then they get even by withholding themselves. Okay. So I just thought I'd talk about a couple of birth traumas that are very relevant since the 1980s. And this is a whole generational thing. So we've got a whole lot of people that weren't in control of when they were born and allow power to be taken away through them. So when I'm working with someone with this, it'll be like claiming back your power, claiming back, I can do things, I can move forward, or just understanding what the consequences are of that birth type. It's like star signs with each of the birth trauma types. You've got you know different attributes that people need to work through with all of the different birth traumas. Okay, so what we really want is a loving environment to be born into. And this is an example of the placenta coming out and staying attached to the baby. And with my hypnotherapy, I also take people back to birth situations, and people often say, oh, the placenta feels like my friend because we've been together for like 9 months. And so they feel really connected to it. So when you have that abrupt cutting of the cord, not only does it cause, you know, that first breath to be traumatic, it's like the disconnection with the placenta that they've been friends with for 9 months. And so if we let it naturally dry, then it's slower and it's easier. And I have heard stories of people carrying the placenta around in like a bucket next to the baby.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Because some people even leave it like a few days until it fully drops apart itself.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So as an environmental scientist, another reason I moved away from that was I realized that when we work with people's trauma, with psychology and how, you know, you're changing people and they appreciate the earth a lot more. So we coined this expression, healthy birth, healthy earth, because if we create a loving birth, then, you know, they'll love the life. Now, another one that I haven't talked about, which really, really painful for men, is circumcision, particularly if it's done immediately after they're born. I mean, the pain is incredible. And all of that is trapped in. And so, you know, the trust that's in, or lack of trust that's still within them, you know, that, yeah, and it's really, it is wonderful to work with people when they're moving through this and trusting and going there. Okay. So I'd like everyone now to think about what would be the perfect situation for a birth. Okay. So I want you to think about what the perfect parents would be like. And they don't have to be your own parents. They can be people. What qualities do you want in parents to be born to? So would anybody like to make a suggestion? Put your hand up. Put your hand up. Okay, Lisa.
Oh, yeah. I was going to invite somebody from the audience, but what comes to my mind is just very loving, caring, doting parents.
Yes, exactly. And so the quality of a mother is like nurturing and caring. And then a quality of a father is the protector. And he's also the fun guy too, that plays. You know, he'll be playing, and the mother's going, no, don't do that. Yeah, I think Ben, are you still here? As a father that's been a father recently, how would you say being for a father? How would you be a perfect father? I know we all.
That's a really interesting question, actually.
Yeah.
You said about being the fun one.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I do. You know, I come in and I play, and I kind of make them really exciting. But when you were speaking first, it was very much about being the protector, about being the one that makes it safe, about, you know, maybe not makes the nest, but maybe keeps it safe. And that's what was kind of coming up from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so having a natural birth is always, you know, the best thing that we can do. So naturally through the birth canal. And then a lot of people are interested in water births, and they are great. I remember I was 16 reading about these Russian women that would go in a lake and give birth in the lake. And this was back in the 1980s. And I was like, wow, isn't that amazing? And you know, it is really fantastic. So of course, it's always got to be safe, in a safe location. I took a man back, and when he was born, he said, oh, I'm in this lovely tropical pool with a waterfall in Hawaii. And, you know, you could just imagine it there, how amazing that would have been. And he came out, and there were all these loving people here to greet you, not in some, you know, like hospital room with bright lights and metal equipment that might be cold on the baby's body. And of course, to immediately go to the mother. So when the baby comes out, might start crawling up, and then having that skin to skin connection, then looking at each other, looking into each other's eyes, you know, absolutely wonderful. Okay. So, and the baby is continually held and not shunted around to all different people, one after the other. It's just come in to a whole new world, from a water environment to air. So it's getting used to this whole new world that's out there. Okay, so how are we doing for time?
We have another 15 minutes. So
yeah. Oops. Hold on. I'm just coming back. Okay. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Because I'm going to lead you on a guided meditation.
I wanted to make a comment.
Yeah.
On what you said about the birth.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel that our whole society views birth like some kind of pathology almost.
Yeah.
You know, like you go to hospital and then everything's antiseptic and all that. And what you said about giving birth in the lake and all that sounds wonderful, but I just wonder how, if I were to be a mother, which I'm not,
yeah,
how, you know, not just how I would approach it, but how everyone around me would create so much fear about it. My God, so much germs, and it's not a controlled environment, and you know, all those stuff.
Yes.
And
you're absolutely right. So it's not always we're able to go out into an environment where, I mean, you have to deal with your own birth trauma first and foremost before you give birth. Okay, you have to work through everything that you experienced, and also your partner needs to as well, who is also involved, because with birth trauma we can carry it through. So it is really important, and I'm not advocating going out and doing it, because you have to be, you know, complications can happen.
So, okay, I'm not a mother, and I'm past the age of being a mother, and I have a desire to be a mother. But of course, I'm a person who's been born.
Yes.
So the fact that how the mother feels is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Whether she feels supported, whether she feels frightened by the whole process. And so I mean, I was an unwanted.
When we're looking at the whole situation, during breathwork sessions, people often go back to womb experiences, and they'll be able to recount how their mother was feeling when she was pregnant, and they'll sometimes get a good understanding of whether they were wanted or not, and even economic situations that might have been happening at the time. And that also impacts you, the hormones in your mother's body that then go across the placenta to the baby, and the baby also gets them. So if the mother has like deep worries or even a bereavement during pregnancy, that does impact the baby too, and the baby is full aware of, you know, something is going on. So you are absolutely right when you say that the situation of the mother is very important.
And things like lighting and all that.
Yes, exactly.
Half lighting.
Yeah, so kind of nice, cooler lighting that's not so bright, because the baby's eyes aren't used to it. Ben, were you there during the delivery of your baby?
I was actually there for the delivery of my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask a question about that, if this is okay. So birth is one of the big adventures, one of the hardest things that mothers do, and one of the most traumatic things, you know, our own birth story, but for the mothers as well. And mothers can feel an awful lot of pressure on them to have the perfect birth.
Yeah.
And it's very rare that a birth may live up to the expectations that you have.
Yeah.
And I know that it's very easy for that pressure that mothers feel to turn into judgment, and to turn into those feelings of, I did it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't what I wanted to. So what would you say about that? About sometimes having this kind of the pressure of this perfect birth of what it should be like, how
Well,
that can
how you
affect.
deal with it. So I've had mothers say to me, you know, I did everything I could. You know, I had the aromatherapy, I had, you know, all the calming music, and I was, you know, ready to go. And then it all went wrong. I was in an ambulance, in hospital in no time. And that happens. And you know what? It's all about letting go of those expectations. Yes, it's the ideal situation, but you know, it's not going to happen all the time. With our society, where midwives put the fear into mothers. I had a friend who, it was actually a work colleague, when she found out she was pregnant, and she was like really looking forward to doing all these and then the midwife got to her and she's like in fear. So has anybody else got any of these experiences? Io, sitting. Oh. Okay, no, she was waving.
I'm unmuted. All right. I have a question. My first son had a really challenged birth. He went up as opposed to going down.
Wow, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, he went up.
He went the wrong way.
He came in his own way, and he
wanted your boobs, did he?
Yeah, he was right up under my boobs, and everything else had dilated. Right? Yeah. It was amazing, and the doctor had to move him down gently with steps. And I've been blessed. I did some work with Leonard Orr too.
Oh, fantastic.
Amazing guy.
Yeah.
And he helped me to understand that my son is always seeming like he's swimming upstream when everybody else is going downstream. He has his own way of doing everything. And because he was stuck in my womb for a while, Leonard Orr and several other people who work with breathing traumas helped me to understand that my son is distancing. He doesn't want help because help was so painful for him.
Yes, exactly. Now,
so to be delivered with the forceps, left no traces of the indentation on his head. And for a moment, he probably could not breathe. He was stuck there. So there's all this fear that he shows oftentimes. And he truly is very challenged. A lot of times he is always doing everything all backwards, discombobulated. And it seems like he just doesn't step out with the sense that I can do this. He thought, but he sabotages himself with fear. And so I asked Leonard, I said, does he need a birth? He said, oh, definitely he does. But he would do breath work with me for only when he was at his wit's end. And he would always say, oh, that feels so good, Mom. And then he won't come back. He won't come back. And I know that's what he needs. So when you have a resistant person like that, which is part of his birth process, what do you do?
So did he came out breech as well?
And he came out breech. Yes, I do know that.
Well, you said, even with a breech baby, and Leonard was a breech, you know. So they go all around the houses, you know. They'll do anything, and you cannot say anything. They will not listen because they have to work it out themselves. And unfortunately, you know, that's where we have to understand, okay, that they've got a breech type birth, you know, all right, that's how they behave. And it's so frustrating because my sister's breech, and it took her to get to her 5th child, before she realized she needed to take a double amount of contraceptive. You know? Yeah. No one could tell her at all.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, absolutely true. So I mean, if you can get him to do some more breathing, but he might not want it, and that's his, you know,
that's his choice. Yes.
Yeah, that's his choice, and you just have to be a loving mother that's
And that's what we have. We have this very interesting dynamic. I love him, he loves me, but he even says sometimes that, you know, you had a lot to do with how all that. And I said, well, no, not really. It just happened. But Claire, another thing, you're saying something so important. If more mothers could hear how the result of their choices about their birth.
Yeah. So it's really important to look at ourselves first.
That can make a big difference on the outcome of how their children's lives would be.
Exactly. And so before I did breath work, I was a hypnotherapist, and there's hypnobirthing, which is absolutely wonderful for helping mothers relax. But you know what? If it's not destined to be, it's not destined to be. So, you know, then you've got to look at the learning lesson from you having to go into hospital and having a baby in a hospital and letting go of the guilt. Yeah. Because I truly believe that we choose our parents before we incarnate. And so my birth, it was pretty natural for that time. It was quite a progressive hospital, but my mum had fallen at 7 months and my head got wedged into her pelvis. So I was a late birth, and then I couldn't get out because I was wedged in the pelvis, and they were going to give us an emergency cesarean. And I must have been, oh, stuff that. I'm not going to be a cesarean baby. My mum went to the toilet and she sat down and I started coming out. And in 4 minutes, I was out. Now, if you
That's incredible.
It is. If you got to know me, you know that I'll ruminate on making decisions, and I'll be like, and I've got to feel it, you know, I've got to feel that it's safe. And once I've made a decision, bam, I go. And so that's my birth.
Nice.
You know,
that's amazing.
It is
fabulous. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for me, like a big trauma for me was more as an infant. I had to have operations. And so for me, that was more significant than my actual birth. Yeah. Okay. So has anybody got more questions? Actually, I love questions. So
I had my 2 children with a cesarean, but it was not planned. Actually, the first one, her heart stopped beating, and they had to take her out by emergency. And she's very sensitive and soft.
Yeah.
And the second one, it was due to oh my God, I don't know the word in English, because I already had a cesarean. It was too dangerous and the child was too big. So it was a kind of a planned cesarean.
Yes.
And she's completely the opposite. She's strong and she goes with her head through the wall. So it's kind of funny how different both are.
Exactly. And so with the first child, just be aware that she might create emergencies in her life to do things. So, and Leonard, I don't know if you also, he talked about this with you, but he'd often, with his own children, and encourage other people that not long after they're born, or you know, in the first few months of life, to hold them in water and literally just hold and breathe and allow them to get their frustrations out. And the child might cry for 2 hours. you know, but you just got to hold them in that loving space and allow them to do that. And he said, you know, it really helps. Yeah. Did he say that to you, Io?
Yeah, he did. I remember that. He said it sort of rebalances them back into the natural environment that they miss.
Yeah, exactly. The water. Yeah. I'm such a water person myself too. Like I love, well, marine biology was my undergraduate, so I loved being in the water. Yeah. How about you, Catherine? Do you know much about your birth?
Oh, yes.
Oh God.
That's a bit traumatic. Right, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. If ever it was the right place for it to come up.
Yeah.
Yes. My mum lost a child
Oh,
at 3 months.
yeah.
And I was born less than a year later.
Okay. Yeah.
So she was grieving quite a lot.
Yeah.
And well, she was still in the throes of grief, but I think
Yeah.
I'm nearly 50, so I think it was like, you know, having another child was something that was prescribed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she really wanted a boy. And, you know, it was always sort of told of as a funny story that they said, you've got a girl. And she said, oh, I wanted a boy. So,
okay.
it was quite traumatic in that way. And I think that's probably why I have some issues around gender, and around prescribed gender. It's
Absolutely.
not that I'm not happy with my assigned sex because I am, but you know, I can see now that maybe that's getting
absolutely.
You know, that's I'm starting to get to the heart of it.
Yes, no, that's so you absolutely. And do you get a sense that it might have been the soul of a boy before you, or could it? See, sometimes it's your soul that comes in, doesn't make it, then comes in again.
You see, it was a boy, but I have read that. I have read of an experience where something got stuck on one of the outer auras. I was just thinking about my daughter actually. Because I became very ill very quickly, and medically I became very ill very quickly. I was absolutely fine, but they induced me. But she would not come until her due date. Yes, they tried absolutely everything. And she is the stubbornest.
Really?
She's so stubborn, and she won't do anything until she's ready to do it. Yeah.
Wow.
Burrow away and do it. So there's really hearing and being gifted some patterns there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's one. She might also be a Taurian. Get a double dose.
She's so stubborn. She's beautiful, but she is very stubborn.
Well, I do understand from a different aspect, because on my birth certificate, my name has an N, so it's Ciaran, and it's a boy's name. And for a long time I did, you know, I had that as my name, but then I got fed up of HMRC sending me letters to Mr. Longman. You know, I was like, so I and actually when I took the N off, it really resonates with me such a lot more. So there was always had a bit of a laugh going into Ireland because it's an Irish name, and they like look at me and look at my name, because you know you'd never do that. You never do that.
No, it's really interesting stuff. And I think I didn't realise that your name was who you are, because I saw an interview with you with Kathleen Booker actually quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And that really sparked my interest. So it's really nice to come back to that and to now know where to resource the information. So thank you.
Yeah, she's a good friend of mine. She's great fun, Kathleen. Yeah. Okay, does anyone...
Ciara, we have like 1 more minute.
Okay.
But I love all of the questions that you've had coming in. You've had some amazing questions. So if anybody has a lingering question, bring it.
Come on. Anything else, Michelle? Okay,
I've got a question.
Ben.
If there was something that wanted to be born right now, what would that be?
Something from me.
Something that wanted to be born in this moment.
In this moment.
What do you feel that would be?
Unity.
Unity.
Yeah. Right now, I think we need unity.
Well, we can definitely have a breath of that.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's join together and create this wonderful world that we're coming into right now. Apparently there's going to be big magnetic storms and solar flares this weekend. So it's actually going to be a very transformational weekend. So your loved ones may need some extra help. You may need to be an ear to a friend, supporting them. So just take note this weekend. And the children might feel it more too.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I've been told that international flights might be cancelled tomorrow, so I might not be able to leave.
Well, fingers crossed that, well, if you want to leave, fingers crossed that you get to leave. And if you don't, then may whatever is for your highest good happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow. Well, I would love to reach out to you again personally, because I kept all of my questions to myself to allow everybody else the space, and this has been very enlightening for me, and I think for everyone who's watching this now and everyone who will watch this in the future. So on behalf of all of us at Breathing Space, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
It's been an absolute joy. Absolutely. It's great to see you. All your smiling faces. Wonderful. This is what humanity is all about. Yeah. So thank you all. And I'll sign out so that you can get on with the next one.
Feel free to stay. Feel free to stay if you want. Yeah. Stick around. Yeah. Well, then we'll take a few minute break. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ciara. That was a lovely session and different to many of our others. So I'm really grateful for you for coming on. Thank you. So we have a 10-minute break. Maybe it'll just be a 6 or 7 minute break.